Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
I think the CW are just trying to win the time slot war with Supergirl Radio.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Is Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio of Tomorrow, which is what I've titled this series of episodes, since we usually do a play on the comic series title. We are reviewing, we did Adventures of Supergirl Radio, we did Supergirl Radio Rebirth. So I thought, if that's okay with you, Morgan, if we could call it Supergirl Radio of Tomorrow for these episodes. So
I like it.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio of Tomorrow, your source for Tom King's comic book run on Supergirl, titled Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are going to discuss and review Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow #1, which was written by Tom King, penciled and inked by Bilquis, is how Tom pronounced it. But when I look at that with my French language background, I see Bilquis. I don't know if that's correct, but Bilquis Evely, and colored by Matt Lopez. The description for this issue reads, quote, Kara Zor-El has seen some epic adventures over the years, but finds her life without meaning or purpose. Here she is, a young woman who saw her planet destroyed and was sent to Earth to protect a baby cousin who ended up not needing her. What was it all for? Wherever she goes, people only see her through the lens of Superman's fame. Just when Supergirl thinks she's had enough, everything changes. An alien girl seeks her out for a vicious mission. I like that, vicious mission. Her world has been destroyed, and the bad guys responsible are still out there. She wants revenge, and if Supergirl doesn't help her, she'll do it herself, whatever the cost. Now a Kryptonian, a dog, and an angry, heartbroken child head out into space on a journey that will shake them to their very core. Unquote. That is a very lengthy description.
Yeah.
The description writer was not, sleeping on the job on this
The description writer was like, I'm just going to stretch my muscles here. Really give them a taste of what they have in store.
So I think that does a pretty good job setting up what you're going to get when you get into Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. So this is a first issue in a new series that is coming out about Supergirl in DC Comics. So Morgan, what did you think about the story in this one? I guess that's where we will start.
Sure. Yeah, I like the idea of doing a space western. I thought that was cool. It was different than some of the other stuff that we've read for her. Like, we've seen her doing space stuff, but this felt very like True Grit. We're kind of thrown into the story from the perspective of, is her name Ruthie?
I think Tom King pronounced it Ruth I. I think he said it both ways, but his first, I think the first time he said it on our interview, he said Ruth I. So that's what I've been trying to say in my head.
Yeah, so we're introduced to her before we ever see Supergirl. So it's kind of told through her story. We're on this planet. We don't kind of know where we are. And we get right away that she is on a mission of vengeance. And I was like, okay, like, where's Supergirl come in? And Supergirl doesn't come in to this Supergirl book for a while. So I was kind of surprised. I don't think Supergirl comes in until, page 9, I think, or page 10. And Supergirl is drinking alone at a bar, which was a different feel for Supergirl. I was like, oh, okay. This Supergirl, she's just like kind of over it. She's kind of like not feeling it. Her and Crypto just drinking the night away.
Crypto is there with her.
Listen, Crypto is literally man's best friend. He's gonna be with you wherever you want to go. You want to go to a bar on a planet with a red sun so you can get a little toasted? Sure. Crypto's right there with you. Crypto is a bro. But yeah, no, I was surprised that that's how we were introduced to Supergirl. Like at first I was like, is that Kara? Is Kara drinking? Is Kara drunk?
I think she was drunk by the time we got to her. Clutch the pearls. Yeah, I was a little surprised by how long it took us to get to Supergirl because Tom King had talked with us about wanting to have a story focused on Supergirl, and I was like, where is Supergirl coming into this? But then I watched True Grit from would you say 2010 or 2010? I've never decided how I feel about that.
I think I always say 2010.
See, I don't know. I feel like it should be 2010, but nobody says that
because we call. Well, I mean,
but people say 2012.
Yeah,
maybe.
2012. Yeah. So I think 2010 is fine.
Does anyone say 2011? That sounds weird.
No, 2011 does sound weird.
Anyway,
is it just 2012?
So I guess I watched the version from 2010. I guess I'll settle on that with Jeff Daniels of True Grit. Because Tom King did mention that True Grit had inspired him to write this story. And so I went back and watched that. And that story opens up with the young Maddie telling the story of how her father is murdered. And I was like, oh, he's sort of matching the narrative structure of that film. Because the True Grit with John Wayne doesn't do that. It starts out a little bit differently. And it doesn't start out as grim. But I love the 2010 version. I like that. I like the Jeff Daniels version better than the John Wayne version.
I've never seen the John Wayne version, and it's been a while since I've seen the 2010 version of True Grit. But yeah, I do remember it starting out with, I think, Haley Steinfeld's character.
Yes.
Yeah, and like her story. And it did it have narration over it too?
I think it did. Yeah, she's telling the story. And Lynn, did I say Jeff Daniels? Is this an Alice Lee, Linda Lee thing where I said something thinking I said one thing and I said something else? I meant Jeff Bridges. If that was the
both great Jeffs, though, I want to say we don't take sides on Jeffs here at Supergirl
We don't discriminate against Jeffs.
We love all Jeffs.
But it does start that movie with Jeff Bridges. Does start with the narration from the young Maddie whose father is murdered. So then it made a lot more sense, and I was a little more forgiving of the comic for not getting to Supergirl faster because then I could see what he was doing. So that made sense to me.
Yeah, I was also like, again, like started the comic. Okay, we're in Ruth I's story. Where's Supergirl? Where's Supergirl? Where's Supergirl? And then finally, we get her. But it's a what would you say? It's like a 25-page issue. So we have to wait about halfway through the issue to get her. And it's only an 8-issue
story. Yeah.
Story. So, I mean, it's splitting hairs, but I would have loved to see Supergirl like a little bit earlier in the Supergirl book.
Yeah. I wondered why he wasn't telling the story from Supergirl's perspective. That was what I was sort of hoping for.
I found myself coming out of this issue with a lot of questions about this take on Supergirl. Like, why is she drinking on her birthday alone? Listen, Crypto is the only friend you'll ever need. Listen, I'm not saying that you need other friends but Crypto, but maybe you want to have another friend but Crypto in the bar with you on your birthday. Like, it seemed like Kara was real down in the dumps in this issue. And I was just like, why? is in a reason in particular. Like the description of the book kind of seems like everything in Kara's life kind of sucks, and this is where she's. But it's like, yeah, but I mean that's kind of been what's been going on for her all along. Like what would drive somebody to be like, on my birthday, I want to go as far away from everybody I know as possible and drink in this bar.
Go to a place where I could get hurt.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is unusual for me.
I want to be in the only place where I have no powers. I just want to get a little drunk with my boy Crypto. And like, listen, again, that does sound kind of lovely, but she seemed a little bit down. Like, I just want to know, like, what was the inciting incident that led her to that bar on her birthday? Because, like, I could buy maybe Supergirl having a down day going, I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to get a little drunk on the only planet that is possible. But on her birthday, that's grim.
Well, she does mention that there's a point in the story where she has to tell Ruth I about her past and about losing her whole world. And so it sort of seemed to me like she was thinking about that. And so that's what drove her to that. But I don't know. There could be a backstory revealed in future issues that will tell us what she's doing there. I hope so. Anyway, I think you make a good point. It would be good to know what gets her to this planet.
Yeah, this is a very like rough and tumble Supergirl. This is like a Supergirl who's like, oh, I'm hungover the next morning and like, get away from me, kid. I just gotta ride this out. I was like, what in the world? What has happened? What has gone wrong in Kara's life recently that has gotten her to this point? So yeah, I kind of wanted to come into that with a little bit more backstory. I know that like, as a character, Supergirl has gotten handed over many times to many different creative teams, and they've, taken bits and pieces. And so her story is not always consistent, but I would love to know in this story, like what got her into that bar on her birthday, drinking away the blues.
Yeah, I didn't mind her being the Rooster Cogburn of the story. It didn't really bother me too much because I actually, and I know this might sound bad about other versions of Kara Zor-El, but this one had a lot more personality. I felt like I kind of got to know her. Like we knew she had been drinking. We knew she was a good fighter. We knew that she had dealt with her past a little bit. We knew she had a good relationship with Crypto. There were a lot of things that I knew about her right off the bat, even if I didn't jump into this comic with a whole bunch of, decades of Supergirl knowledge in my head. But I felt like this Supergirl had at least more personality than anything we've read in Rebirth. And I don't mean that to be derogatory, but sometimes with Rebirth, I felt like I didn't know Kara very well. I felt like I was very distant from her. She felt very generic. And this one, she's drunk, she's cussing, and I like the way that the comic lets you decide what swear word she's using because it's all like asterisks and exclamation points. So whatever bad word you're thinking, that's what Kara's thinking. so if she's saying something really bad, that's on you. That's not on the comic. That's on you.
Kara, we don't know that Kara said that. Maybe she's like, shiitake mushrooms.
So I thought this version of Kara, even if she is cussing and drinking and fighting in a bar, I like that she had a little spunk. She had a little personality, and I liked that about her. So
I think it did
that was
fit
a strong
into
suit.
I think it fit into like the gritty Western vibe that this book was going for. And so I do. In that perspective, I do kind of like that they took the character in a different direction than we've seen her in the past. And I think you're right about Rebirth. There's a lot of things to say about Rebirth, but a lot of it, to me at least, reading it, I was really confused. We were zooming all over the place. There was a lot of action happening. Often I didn't understand why it was happening or who like people would just pop in and then they'd pop out and you'd be like, all right, bye Omega Man, I guess.
Bye Turret Golden Axe.
And bye
See
Turret
you
Golden
later.
Axe. Come back, please. I love you. But I didn't feel very Kara focused. And at the very least, this story feels like it is focused in general, which makes me feel a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more hopeful that it will be Kara focused, because I think this story at the very least is going to be, it's 8 issues. They've got a clear theme. They're doing the True Grit Western thing. They've got sort of a framing to the story. And so I feel like it's going to be more focused in versus Rebirth, which is, I think the problem with Rebirth is it was too many things at once. It was always like,
and it never finished a thought. They had this whole run of this whole series where Kara was maybe kind of dating Ben, and I think they went to prom together at one point, and then
then Ben just disappeared.
And that happened all the time in those Rebirth issues, and you could never. I can't speak for anybody else. I could not get attached to anything that was, except for Director Bones. I was very attached to Director Bones, but anything else, I had trouble with.
I mean, but even Director Bones was in and out of that book. He would show up and then he would just disappear. It's like, yeah, exactly. As soon as I would get attached to story element in Rebirth, it would be gone. Like 2 issues later, and nobody would ever speak of it, which was what like drove me more crazy, which was like, is this still in the same timeline where she's like working at Catco and she's got that thing with Ben? Because now there's this dude named Zinder Cole and nobody ever speaks of Earth, and we're just worried about Gandello. Like, what happened with the first part of this? And I could understand, I could wrap my head around it if it had been called something different. Like if it was like Supergirl Rebirth and like Supergirl out in space or something, like, I don't know. I don't name things for a reason, but because it was all one continuous title, it was like you were just getting whiplash. So at the very least, regardless of what we both end up, I think, thinking about this title at the end, I feel like it's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not going to veer off onto some weird side quest where we discover that there's a superhero named Soap.
And they're not gonna, start out the series where a character doesn't have a hand, and then halfway through they give her a hand, and you're like, "What? I thought she didn't have a hand."
Eliza's miraculously appearing, disappearing hand.
It's like, what? Yeah, I think that was my main takeaway after reading this. It was, I thought, written very well. It had a great start to it, and there were lots of twists and turns. We might get into those. But my biggest takeaway was, this feels like this is going somewhere. This feels like it has a story that has intention and purpose behind it. And that is something that I think has been missing from a lot of Supergirl stories in general. I don't want to say just the comics.
I think that
this feels like they know, like Tom King seems like he knows the story that he wants to tell. And I think that's been missing.
Yeah, I feel like probably because he came in and he knew, I'm getting 8 issues to tell this story, he's going to be able to tell a way more compact, concise story versus Rebirth, where I feel like they started it and then I think halfway through changed creative teams.
They did.
And so you could absolutely tell when they changed creative teams. They didn't change anything about the book, but suddenly all the stuff from like the last run of issues was just gone.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, for me as a reader, that's just hard for me to deal with. It's like, and I think it's for me as a reader, one of my main issues with comics is that like they don't make them reader friendly like that. Like, what if you had just jumped on, you're like really getting into the story, and then you're not paying attention to like behind the scenes comics gossip, and suddenly you pick it up and you're like, where is Ben? Who's Gandello? Like, what?
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't seem like this story is attached to another book series.
Yeah.
Some of the Supergirl issues from Rebirth felt like they were trying to have to work the Omega Men in because the Omega Men were doing something else somewhere else. And then Superman and Zod and that whole conspiracy thing was happening in other books.
Do you remember when we discovered about halfway through an issue that like we had missed a Superman issue that would have explained a lot of stuff to us?
A whole lot of context that we completely missed. But yeah, so that's what I like about reading this is I know this is going to be just a Supergirl story, and that will make me feel better as a reader because it won't be so frustrating.
And I think that's why a lot of people, when you talk about Supergirl stuff recently, they point to Supergirl being super, which I have not finished. Disclosure, I started and I really liked it. And then life happened and I didn't finish it, and I'm going to. But I think that there's like the reason that people like that is because it was a short, concise story about Supergirl. It knew exactly what it wanted to do. It knew, and because it was concise, it knew what it wanted to do with the character. And I think that the problem with some of these ongoings, especially if they have to tie into, stuff that's happening in the universe, is that it can just kind of feel like you're reading like a squiggly line, and you're just like, what's happening? So I think that there is some value in these shorter runs, even though obviously I know we'd both love to see a Supergirl ongoing all the time. But I think the benefit of the shorter run where it's, they know when the story starts, when it ends, is that we're going to get something that at least reads a little bit cleaner and I think a little bit tighter.
And the similarity to Supergirl being super, I believe, is that series was written by the same writer each issue. So,
yes. That's going to help.
Like Tom King, it's just going to be Tom King. It's not going to be 3 or 4 different people writing it. So it's going to have a very clear voice that goes, and a consistent voice that goes across all of the issues. So yeah, I know there are some issues that people have with this new characterization of Kara, although I wouldn't say it's a completely new characterization. Kara on the TV show, she's gotten drunk.
That's true.
She's cussed before. And even with the killing thing, she got angry and torched, Red Tornado. She activated the button that killed Queen Rhea. I mean, it's not so far off.
I will say that was kind of the one part of this issue that I was not super nuts about, was that they, the voiceover basically tells us, and like eventually, I find this. Ruth I says, like, I find the guy who killed my father and Supergirl kills him before I can ask him questions. And it's like, all right. But again, it's kind of a story, right? So I don't want to prejudge something that happens in the future because we don't really know the circumstances of what's going to happen or why it happens. So yeah, it was one of the things that I wasn't nuts about because I don't love the idea of Supergirl, killing people if she can avoid it.
Well, that's always the preference.
It's not always possible.
And she references in the story that killing is bad and that you shouldn't do it and that she has standards. So I'm sure eventually we'll get to see what happens. And I'm kind of open-minded about it because I'm like, I don't know what the circumstance is.
Exactly.
I don't know what the situation is for that yet. I think she says that Supergirl delivers the fatal blow and that the Krem, the bad guy of the story, is like begging for his life in tears. So we have no idea really how that's going to play out. But I also at the same time, I'm like, well, at least it's not going to end with Supergirl giving a hope speech. It would be nice if there was a different way to end a Supergirl story. I'm not crazy about the idea of Supergirl killing either if she can help it, but I mean, that's spoiler alert for True Grit. I mean, the guy who kills Maddie's father, she kills him. So it's not, it's not unheard of in a Western that, especially in True Grit, where the whole premise of the story is nobody in the town cares about Maddie's father dying. She doesn't trust the law to go after Tom Chaney, and she thinks that nobody's going to get justice for her and her family. And so that's why she goes and hires Rooster Cogburn. And so that's a similar situation here. where Krim of Yellow Hills is that where he's from?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a connection there in True Grit where I think Ruth wants justice for her father, but even Kara's like, you should seek justice and not revenge. So I understand the issues that people have with that, but at the same time, I think Tom King has established that Kara does have these standards that she's trying to abide by. So I don't know. I'm kind of I come down to, is it a good story? I try not to have expectations for what a character should or shouldn't do. I just want to read a good story. So I'm going to go on this ride and see where I get to at the end of 8 issues and see how I feel about it. And then I'll make a judgment then. but at this point, after 1 issue, I can't get worked up about it. I just want to see read a good story and go on a journey with these 2 characters.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it too. Like I immediately was like, I don't know if I'm going to like that. But again, I don't know if I'm going to like that because I haven't gotten to it yet.
Right.
So I'm interested, and the story might have introduced it that way for the shock factor, right? To have you go like, oh wait, what? Supergirl did what? And then when we get to the circumstances, it could be something completely different. So I am interested to see where they're taking it. And there were some moments that I really liked her characterization. I think on page 15, she kind of looks at Ruth I kind of sadly, like, oh, like after she tells her sad story, and then she pukes, of course. But but I think
that's what happens when you drink.
She's like, oh, I feel so bad for you. I'm gonna just puke in this bucket for just a second. But I think that we do see her have a lot of empathy for this girl, and to kind of try to, dissuade her from going on this path of vengeance, and going like, this is not going to lead anywhere good, and sorry, I can't help you. But killing is bad and stuff like that. And I thought that was good. I think that she does have a lot of empathy, and she does feel really bad for Ruth I, and she I think she understands her perspective on the idea of like losing her world and losing people who were really important to her. I think she even says like, I came out here to basically to not think about kind of how my life has gone the same way. And now like you're kind of reminding me of all this basically trauma that I have. But I liked her immediately kind of bonding with this girl who needs help. That felt very Supergirl to me.
Yeah, it's very Supergirl, and it's one of the things that sort of crop up in all of my, or pop up in my favorite Supergirl stories. Crop would be cutting it out. But I tend to gravitate towards the Supergirl stories where she's helping someone. Those are usually my favorite Supergirl stories. Like, for example, Sterling Gates' Bizarro Girl, the comics from the 70s and 80s when she's in college and she makes friends at the school and she gets to know the people who live in her building. There's also a comic called The Way of the World where she tries to cure a little boy of his cancer. And even in the New 52, I've been reading that here recently. I'd only read the first volume a long time ago. And so I kept reading into it. And she becomes friends with Silver Banshee, and she's helping Silver Banshee with things. And so I like those kinds of stories. You even see it on the TV show. She, befriends Livewire and tries to kind of, see her through. So I think those are always, those are the Supergirl stories that I gravitate to. And so I think this has the potential to be another one of those stories. Because I think for me, that's when Supergirl is at her best, when she's caring about somebody else and when she is trying to help someone else. And she even mentions in the story that her mother told her, what was it about compassion? It was something about compassion, not fury, or something like that. Life is about compassion, not fury. And so I think that's one of Supergirl's main characteristics is compassion, help, hope, and compassion for all. So I was glad to see that pop up in the story.
I was afraid that they were going to go so gritty with her. Like, this is gritty Supergirl. She's drinking at a bar. She's getting in bar fights. And and that we were going to lose that heart of the character. And I feel like at least in this issue, it's still there. Yes, Supergirl is having a bar fight in a bar and puking into a bucket, and those are new for her. But she does still really care about Ruth Eye. She wants to sort of lead her in a different direction, and she immediately kind of feels for this girl and understands her pain and empathizes with her. And I think that's a big thing about the Supergirl character, is how much empathy she has for other people and how she kind of empathizes with people and kind of connects with them immediately.
Okay, so we've talked about most of the story leading up to the fact that she meets Ruth Eye, and they go through the whole proposition of the arrangement that Supergirl is going to be kind of a bounty hunter to find this guy named Krem who killed Ruth Eye's father. Could we speak about all of the twists that happen at the end? Can we just fast forward to the end? Because that's where all the really good stuff happens. I mean, it's good throughout the whole issue, but really at the end, it's like where I was like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff happening. What did you think about some of those twists there at the end with the ship?
So I will say I'm immediately mad at Tom King, and that's because I didn't think I was going to have to do a "Does the dog die?" on this issue. Crypto better be okay, is all I'm saying. I did not see her getting shot with arrows coming, but I definitely didn't see Crypto getting shot with arrows, and it was upsetting. I was upset. I was mad. I was like, not Crypto, not my good boy. And it's very, and like, it's upsetting the way it's done too.
Yeah,
she's like, Crypto didn't realize, Crypto didn't realize that, he's not strong, or he's not like a superpowered on this planet with the red sun. And so Crypto is just thinking, I'm a super dog like usual. And he's doing what good boys do. He's protecting Supergirl, and he gets an arrow in him. And I did not like that at all. I was like, excuse me. I would like to talk to someone's manager.
The panel that really got me was the one where Supergirl, who has 3 arrows coming out of her chest and her entire S shield is red with blood. The panel says, though she was torn with pain, I think Supergirl would have followed if Crypto hadn't let out that whine.
Oh, that got me. I had to like
was
lean
emotionally
back.
stirring.
I had to like lean back and like just like fan myself. I was like, "Don't you cry, Morgan. Don't you cry. Crypto's gonna be fine. I'm sure he's gonna be fine."
Oh man, that was tough to read. Just because I could hear a little dog whining as I read it. And so I thought that was written really well, because it did make me feel something. I have a feeling that Crypto is going to be okay, because I've seen some other comic book covers with Crypto on them. And I think I've seen some preview pages, maybe from number 2, so I think he's going to make it.
Crypto is a survivor. He's going to make it. Like, I believe in him. Destiny's Childlike. But but it was tough to see my boy Crypto get shot with an arrow like that and go down. I was like, no.
It was sad.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting them to take the ship. I will admit that. I thought that was a huge twist. So they set it up. It's like Chekhov's ship, right? Because when Ruth Eye swims after her and sees her with her ship, she's trying to kind of explain to her. She's like, "This is a horse that you can't stop," which I thought was really funny. Just trying to like explain like spaceship technology to somebody who's never seen it. This metal box blasts into the air. But she's like, now that I've started like the procedure, basically the countdown, like, you need to get out of here because it's going to go up into the air. And I should have seen it coming that she spent all that time explaining that like once it's got started, it's gonna go, that something was gonna happen with that, because it was like a little bit much where she was like, and then once it goes, like, it's gonna go, like, you have to get out of here. And I was like, okay, like, sure, like you're really into your spaceship, but it was really to set up that that the villains were gonna steal her ship at the end, kind of unknowingly, because they don't know what a spaceship is either. Presumably, if Ruth I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, and she makes a point to say something in the narration that he probably went in there just to take cover or to deal with his weapons, and he didn't know it was about to blast off. So he's probably just as freaked out as much as Supergirl probably is.
Yeah, he runs onto the ship, but then the ship kind of closes up and takes off. And so I don't know that we're sure where he is going. Is he going to Earth? I was like, uh-oh. Like, where is this awful villain? Did she just shoot him off into Earth?
Well, that's an interesting question, because where do they go from here? So I assume that Supergirl and Crypto are going to need some sort of medical emergency surgeries to get them all fixed up. But how do they go after Krem if they don't have a spaceship? So what do they do? So I'm very curious to see what happens with that, because I assume they're going to have to chase him to see where he goes. So that's I also assume that Supergirl knows where he went, because I
feel like she had to.
Ship.
Yeah, she had to put the coordinates in. She had to be like beep boop bop, and then oh no, it can't be changed now.
So at least that's probably the case, that she probably knows where he's gone, so that if they can chase him, they'll follow suit. But I don't know how they're going to go after him if nobody on the planet knows what a ship is. Oh, there's your there's your Beaker sighting for the evening.
I guess it's the Beaker sighting of the. Do you want to say hi, or are you just going for a drive-by, buddy? What's up? Right to the camera. Right to the camera, bud. All right. Are you ready to leave now, or you just want to be involved?
A lot of people were asking about
I saw that in the chat. If there's a Beaker sighting. Always at some point.
He knew people were asking.
He doesn't care what we're talking about, if we're interviewing someone, if it's not professional to do. Wow, Beaker straight up glared, says Julia in the chat. He did. He looked right into the camera. That's right, Andy. He knows his audience awaits him. I think he had been like trapped in a different room. We had like kind of held him up because we were doing some chores and stuff, and so I think the glare was about him resenting that I was almost done with this, but like I was halfway through the podcast and he hadn't gotten his say yet.
That is so funny. I'd be curious what Beaker's thoughts were on this issue.
I feel like Beaker did not like the crypto thing either. He's like,
or did he? Maybe it's like a cat versus dog thing. Like that dog deserved it. So were there any other aspects of the story that you wanted to talk about?
I'm trying to think I did think it was funny that she doesn't have her costume on at first, and it kind of like it gets whatever she's wearing gets torn, and you see like the S shields. And then later on, when she's talking to Ruth Eye's like, "I'm a woman of the world. I know what underwear look like." It's like, you think underwear? You think it involves a cape?
Well, it was under her clothes.
That's true. She was like, I know what ladies' undergarments look like, a full costume with a cape and a skirt.
Well, there is a mention. Supergirl says you weren't supposed to see that. So do you think that Supergirl is running away from being Supergirl?
I don't know. I got the impression more that she like doesn't want people to know she's Supergirl. She's like a celebrity. She's got on the giant sunglasses and the hat pulled down real low, and she's just trying to drink her troubles away in some like little corner planet where no one knows her name. Unlike the bar in Cheers, where everyone knows your name. she's kind of doing a reverse Cheers in this situation. But that was the impression I got, that she just kind of didn't want people to go like, oh, it's Supergirl here. Although I don't know that the people on that planet would have recognized her as Supergirl.
They didn't seem to.
Didn't seem like they were getting her comics. They weren't getting Rebirth there. It doesn't seem like. So I don't think that they've heard the good news.
That might be for the best. I don't know. But I liked the idea. In my interpretation was that she was trying to drink away some of her problems, and maybe part of that had to do with maybe the stress or the pressure of being Supergirl. And I liked that even though she was trying to hide it so that nobody could see it, it still revealed itself when they're fighting in the bar and all of that. The S shield still came through. So to me, I was sort of reading into it like she's trying not to be Supergirl, but she's always gonna be Supergirl. Supergirl's always there, whether it's how she identifies herself, or if it's that old debate of like, is Superman who I am or Superman what I do? Like she could still do Supergirl things or be Supergirl, even if she was trying to sort of run away from it. So I don't know. I took a lot of maybe reading too much into the Supergirl coming out of her Western attire.
I love it.
Yeah. So were there any other things? We talked a little bit about Krem, but not too much. I guess we should mention he's referred to as a criminal and a thief. He got into an argument with Ruth Eye's father. Her family had provided him a meal and shelter, and he killed her father, even though they were really nice to him. Referred to them as a godly family, which I thought was very interesting. And then there's some mention of a king's agent. They think he's a king's agent because there's some new king, I guess, on this planet. So that I think is really interesting, because that's not a True Grit thing. I was a little worried that maybe they would just adapt True Grit, but that's very, very different from True Grit.
Yeah, I wanted to know so much more about the the world of this planet. Oh my God.
Bunsen showed up.
Now Bunsen is jealous that Beaker got his time in the spotlight. And now Bunsen, oh no, are you shy? You're shy now?
This is a rare Bunsen sighting.
It's a rare Bunsen sighting. I think that they've both been cooped up, and they want to get their opinions about this issue of Supergirl. They want it to be known, right, Bunsen? Right, buddy? He's like, no, not me.
Not interested.
But yeah, I found myself really wanting to know more about the world, because they talk a lot about like he's a king's agent, and there's kind of a sort of an atmosphere that like there would be no justice for them, because he was a king's agent, and he left this like very fancy sword in her father because whatever, like I guess he has access to these kind of swords, and kind of the thought that he was like, I don't know, upper class, or he was some sort of like security or something. Like I just wanted to know more about the world, like why haven't they heard of Supergirl, and why don't they know anything about spaceships, and like it was just I think we got just enough of the world to get an idea of it, but enough that I had like many questions about sort of like the world building elements of this place that Ruth Eye is, and that Supergirl finds herself in.
Yeah, I want to know more about this king. He seemed to not care for dissidents or people who did not like him. So
yeah,
maybe he's actually the big bad of the story. So I don't know. I hope we get to know more about him, because he seems important. I don't know. It's probably going to be more about Krem and finding him and getting justice for her father's murder. But I don't know. The king seems like bad news. I did not get a good vibe from him.
No, me neither. I was like, what is this king up to? It feels like feels like a planet that's very like harsh, like very tough. Like times are tough. Life is hard on this planet. People will kill you for a disagreement.
Yeah, so it's definitely a town out of an old Western film for sure. So let's talk about the art. Did you have any favorite panels or pages that stuck out to you as very interesting to your eye?
I thought the art in this one in general was just beautiful. Like, I loved the art in here. I was like, oh my God, like this is beautiful Supergirl art. Like, this is art that like the character deserves, basically.
Yes.
It was gorgeous. Like, not just the art, but the colors.
Oh,
in
the
this
coloring
book
was so good.
was so beautiful. Like, you would have like the first page is all like pinks and purples, and then like the next couple pages kind of transition to like a blue purple, and then there's a couple pages that are all blue, and then like the bar scenes are very like brown. Like the use of colors in this are so pretty. And it really does set the scene. Like, you feel like you're in a different world with all of those different colored skies and like different colored like I wouldn't say mountains, but you know, you can kind of see mountains in the distance that are like kind of weirdly shaped, and they're purple. And I just thought it was so beautiful. I loved page 13, which is the splash page of Supergirl holding the sword with Crypto, who's super psyched to be like in the action. He's like, "Arf!" Her little incognito outfit is ripped a little bit, and you can see just the peak of the S shield through it. I thought that one was really cool.
Yeah, and she has taken down the man who slapped Ruthai, and she has him firmly on the ground. She's taken both of his swords. She is in the power and control position there in that. So it's a really great page for Supergirl.
And I also really loved page 15, the top panel, before she starts puking, because we see her looking at Ruthai, and she has so much empathy in the drawing, like in the facial expression. You can tell that she really feels for this girl. She kind of relates to the struggle that she's going through, and can really kind of understand where she's coming from. And then, of course, she's going to puke a little bit. And then, of course, page 16, the top page, which I think is the panel you have in your background.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But, it's gorgeous. So they're out on a dock, and Supergirl is getting into a boat, and you can sort of see like the orange clouds and the yellow and the red sun and like purple mountains, and just like the art and the colors in this are so good. Like, I was just really blown away by how like beautiful and kind of watercolory and like really cinematic the art is in this one.
That's so funny that you would use the word cinematic, because True Grit has a lot of, especially, and I keep referencing the Jeff Bridges version.
Not the Jeff Daniels version.
Not the Jeff Daniels. That's a totally different movie. That version from 2010 it has a lot of landscape shots, where it's a lot of like wide shots of, you know, the I don't know what you would refer to it as, the West, the Wild West, you know, the places where they're going. It's, you know, big, wide spaces. And so I think that I sort of got that vibe from True Grit, that they were using all these landscape images to sort of convey that old Western feel. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of like, a lot of art that kind of shows the background and shows the planet. And I think that gives us a real good sense of place in this planet. Like when on page 17 and 18, when Ruthai like jumps into the water and swims, and you can kind of see like her come up onto land, and then there's grass and these like cool like weeds that kind of like twirl around, and they're blue. I feel like the art really gives us a sense of place. Like I don't know, like the story is telling us this thing about about this planet and kind of what it's like, and the art is kind of reinforcing this idea that it's kind of, you know, it seems sparsely populated. It seems a little bit barren. It's not, they're not in the middle of a city. There's a lot of, you know, land and a lot of pulled back shots of scenery. And I think that gives us the idea that, you know, Ruthai could be out here on her own in this planet very easily.
Yeah, I thought the art and the writing complemented each other very well. Okay, so I have a lot of favorite pages and panels, so
Nice.
I'll mention them very quickly. So page 1, I thought captured my attention immediately because I loved the use of silhouette, which I thought was really, really cool. And I went to look up on the interwebs why silhouette might be used. So I looked up silhouette uses in filmmaking. And silhouettes can reflect a couple of things. It can convey sadness or tension or suspense or something sinister or isolation. And so I like that the use of silhouette was here during the retelling of how Ruth I's father was murdered, because I think it does a lot of those things right off the bat. And immediately on page 1, in that same set of panels, you get to see a red sun. So you know right off the bat that you're encountering a planet where Supergirl's not going to have her power. So I think the art did a really good job to set that up right at the get-go. I also liked on page 9, Ruth I is slapped by the big brute in the bar. I don't think he ever gets a name.
I don't think so either. Huh?
But he slaps her, and that slap panel is the only one on the page that has a different colorization and tone to it, which I think is why it stands out to my eye. And I loved the use of red here because I think it conveys pain because it looks like it hurts, the action of what's going on, and even the blood, I think, is maybe what some of that red is trying to point out to you, that there's blood of the slap because she would probably be bleeding. And I thought this panel was really interesting because on the left side of that, maybe this is only me, but does it look like there are eyes? Is there an eye on the left side of that panel?
It looks a little bit like it, yeah.
Like it was somebody watching it. I don't know if that's like supposed, and maybe it's not an eye. Maybe I'm just reading into it, but it sort of looked like, I don't know, if I was going to give my interpretation, maybe it's like Supergirl seeing what's happening, and this is why she decides to step in. So I don't know if that's right. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's something that stuck out to me that I thought was really interesting. Let's see. The only thing, listen, I'm not even going to all my positives of the art, and then I'll get to one question I have about it. So I don't know, Morgan, I can't remember if you read these digitally with the guided view or not, but I always kind of do.
I usually don't do the guided view. I usually do the one-page view.
Okay.
Occasionally I'll do the guided view, but like sometimes it's just like it's too much, like
Yeah.
The movement is just too much for me.
They both have their advantages because sometimes you get a different perspective just going page by page, and then sometimes you get an even different perspective. I like the guided view because it's almost like watching a film, because like it's almost like storyboards, so you get to see reveals a little better. And so there were a couple of times where that happened in the issue where I was like surprised when I would get there, because I would get to the guided view, and because I wouldn't spoil myself, because if you go page to page, you sort of already see what's there. So on page 18, the guided view had a really cool reveal of a ship. Like I didn't know what was there, and then all of a sudden there was a ship, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. There was also another one on page 21, there in the guided view, there's a reveal of Supergirl being shot with arrows by Krim, and I thought that was a really good, shocking reveal there. And even when Krim is revealed not too long after that to be the one who shot her, I really liked that with the guided view. I think I like reading it with guided view on the first reading, and then afterwards, if I'm going to reread it, I'll read page to page, because sometimes you get a different layout on the individual page that shows you different steps of the panels, and that gives a benefit. So I thought some of that was really cool. Let's see. I also liked on page 23, there is a panel where Supergirl with no powers grabs a sword with her bare hands.
Oh, yeah, that was gnarly.
I was like, whoa. She has no fear of these guys whatsoever, because her hand is definitely bleeding.
She is not playing at this point. Not playing at all.
I thought that was really cool. So I really enjoyed that. And of course, the final page on page 26, where Krim accidentally gets into the ship. Well, he doesn't accident. He intentionally goes in there, but he accidentally takes off in the ship. I love the use of the motion there, because I can kind of feel the whoosh and the wind and the power coming out of that. So I like the way that made me feel like the image was a little bit palpable. I could kind of sense it. The only thing I had trouble with, and maybe you can help me understand this. So on page 12, the only issue I had with some of the art, which is otherwise gorgeous, is that I don't understand what is happening in some of the action on page 12.
I would actually agree with that. I was reading this comic, and in these panels, I think in like the barroom brawl scene, I was a little bit lost in terms of some of the action. And I do think you're right. I think it's page 12, where I kind of like he swings at her, and she ducks, and then something happens. I guess she grabs him from below. What?
Yeah, I think that's the panel I was struggling with too, because I understood everything before and after that one, but I could not figure out what.
Yeah, I've like zoomed in.
Doing.
So like,
it's the panel that has the bubble that says "some." That's what I can't figure out.
So it's obvious that she flips him over, like her back, but in this panel, it's not obvious what's happening at all. Like I see her face down at the bottom, and his arm is kind of up at the top, and there's a table. I think the table is involved somehow.
Yeah, I think that's the table. I was trying to figure that out,
but I don't know how the mechanics of this work. Like, where is she?
So does the
to him?
Table go into his stomach? Is that basically what's happening?
Maybe I'm kind of
now I'm doing over the table.
Now I'm doing the guided view to try to figure out like what's happening here. And I see her. So he swings at her. She kind of leans forward. There's a table nearby. Crypto's just kind of looking at what's happening. And then, and then there's a panel where it's just like her head towards the bottom. There's the table. And then he's still swinging the sword. Like, I guess I just don't see. And then when we come out to the next panel, she's flipped him over onto the table. But it's not clear at all, like, how that action. I mean, I guess you can infer. It's just a little bit. It's not super clear to me either.
Yeah, that was the only panel I was like, I actually don't know what was happening there. But I guess it makes sense that she flipped him over, and that's how he landed on the table.
Yeah, I struggled with that one a little bit too. I was like, I'm not really quite sure what's happening here.
But other than that was that one panel that I was like, oh, I don't know. But other than that, I loved the art. I thought it complemented the writing and the storytelling very, very well. And I also thought Kara's hair was great.
Kara's hair was great. I mean, listen, she doesn't have her superpowers on that planet, but does she need them? No, not with that head of hair.
I will always remember Sarah Louver, aka Comiker Girl. I think she told us on Supergirl Radio one time that it was difficult to draw hair. And I always think about that when I read these comics and I look at their hair to see who did hair well. And this issue did as it had just the right amount of curls, and so I thought it was great. All right, so I guess let's just go to some quick overall thoughts. So what did you think about Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow #1?
I mean, it was intriguing. I think it was an interesting start to the story. I think that the art is like, even if I didn't like the story, I would still buy it for the art. It's so good. And it's nice to have a Supergirl story that feels like it's going to be more focused and a little bit more zoomed in on her. Or if not her, then just one story at a time. It's going to be a nice change of pace. I mean, I had some questions about the Supergirl characterization, but every writer sort of takes her in different directions. So I'm interested to see where this sort of direction goes and what the story about, Ruth and her quest for vengeance and how that's going to play into Supergirl's story and Kara's story and where she is, kind of emotionally right now in the book. And I was interested. Yeah, it made me want to, it did its job, right? Because I want to know what happens in number 2, especially for Crypto.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty rare for me in some of the recent Supergirl comics where I got to the end. I was like, oh, I wish I could read another issue right now. That would be good. So I think that was exciting to want to read the next issue. And I'm pretty open-minded about comic book characters. I think I'm very rare in DC comic fandom because I'm like, yeah, you can pretty much do whatever you want to with the characters. Just make sure I can see a little bit of an essence of who they are and go nuts. I don't care. I would rather you push boundaries and be bold than just do the same thing I've read in other stories. So I'm pretty open-minded. So I actually like that I can sort of see Tom King's perspective on Supergirl in this. I like that when you read a different Supergirl story from different eras of the character, you can see different writers putting their own spin on the character. So I would actually rather him do something different and do something from his point of view. So I like that we're getting that here for sure, even though sometimes it may be a little different from maybe what I would do if I was writing it, but I'm not a writer and this isn't my book. So I'm pretty open-minded about that. And I can still see a lot of what I know about Supergirl in this characterization. So I'm not mad at it. I'm just glad that it doesn't seem like the story is going to be floating around until they figured the next step. It seems like if you watch a good show that had an endpoint and you knew you're like you said at the beginning that has a beginning, middle, and end, and you were just going to go along for the ride. So that's kind of how I feel about it right now, is that I'm just going to take whatever journey this is, and as long as the stories and the characters are written well, then I'm up for anything. And I think if he goes by True Grit as inspiration, I hope by the end of it that I will feel as attached to Kara and Ruth as I did to Maddie and Rooster Cogburn at the end of True Grit. So I hope that's what happens, is that by the end of 8 issues, I'm going to be like, oh, I care so much about these two characters. So that's I don't want to put too much expectation, but if he does the True Grit inspiration well, I think I'm gonna be really attached to them.
Yeah, I liked the Western, the space Western, but I liked the space Western theme. I thought it was interesting. I think we've seen a lot of Supergirl on the ground and we've seen a lot of Supergirl in space, just kind of floating from one adventure to another. But I like that this had kind of a genre to it. It was, a little bit different, a little bit weird, even in parts. But I thought it worked for this story. At least it worked for the introduction. So I'm interested. I'm interested. I'm definitely coming in for the next issue. I want to know what's going to happen.
I mean, it's not like this is something totally crazy. It's not like a Matrix protoplasm who bonds with a satanic cult member. I mean, there have been weirder things in Supergirl comics is all I'm saying. So this is actually pretty tame. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what comes next. I don't know that we have like a release date for the next issue. So I guess we'll have to just kind of.
It's not going weekly or monthly, maybe?
I'm assuming it's monthly, but I'm not entirely sure. If anybody in the chat knows, let us know, because I have not seen a release date as of yet. So I will have to look out for that. Before we wrap up, we do have an email from a listener named Quinn,
nice.
who writes, quote, I am overall really fond of this Kara, and I was pleased that Tom King was so candid in saying that DC was realistic about Supergirl book sales not doing well, and that it's a problem because she is so iconic. The whole first page where Kara herself is introduced had me cracking up because it reminded me of myself trying to take a minute for myself while juggling my responsibilities. And Quinn sort of puts out a scenario. She says, Mommy scheduled this time for herself. I got a babysitter, came to a Red Sun, and I'm not going to let you spill my beer because of money. And Quinn goes on to say, but of course, like myself, Kara sees injustice in someone in need and still does the right thing because that altruism, even if it's crusty, like Tom said, is always going to be there. I like that she was trying to have boundaries and saying, Now I've got to get back to my hero gig and still be like, hey, don't kill people. It doesn't come off as dumb either to me. I think it's legitimately, I'm tired. I set this boundary, but please, I hope you will listen to me. And she said, and Quinn says, Ruthie is adorable and so formal. And asks the question, is this a literary theme? I feel like it has something to do with dissecting the hero's journey. And I did write some things down in my notes about the hero's journey because there's definitely a hero's journey. I think not only in this story, but of course in True Grit. Definitely in these issues, there is a call to adventure when Kara meets Ruthie. And I guess maybe the call to adventure for Ruthie would be the death of her father and her wanting to seek revenge. But I think for Kara, it would be definitely that bar fight scene. There's also the next step is the refusal of the call. And that definitely happens where Kara's like, you know what? I don't think I'm right for your little arrangement. I think I'm going to go. And she leaves Ruthie, I guess, at the little pier. So that definitely happens. So in the hero's journey, there's a lot of steps. But definitely in this issue, in issue number 1, there's the call to adventure and the refusal of the call. So we'll have to look and see if there's maybe a supernatural mentor guide that shows up soon, because I think that is the next step of the hero's journey. So we'll see if we get something like that. And Quinn ends the email saying that. I guess this is Quinn talking to Tom King. Tom King at Tom King regarding crypto. If he's only in one issue, I already had to see him die in the Superwoman Limited series, and there's some crying emojis. And Quinn ends the email. If I didn't know Tom King loved dogs so much, I'd be much, much more worried. But OMG, he better be okay, unquote. So I think a lot of people are feeling like that.
A lot of us are worried about crypto.
Nobody wants to see crypto die. So hopefully that is the case, that he will be better in the second issue. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for our thoughts on Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow number 1. If you've already picked up this issue, make sure to give it a rating in Comixology or your DC Comics app.
And if you haven't bought it yet, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow number 1 is available in the DC Comics app, the Comixology app, as well as Comixology.com, Google Play, the Nook Store, Amazon, and at readdcentertainment.com.
And I think now let's get to some DC TV podcasts and Supergirl Radio plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio, Superman and Lois Radio, The Flash Podcast, and Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, Black Lightning Podcast, Batwoman Podcast 2, and Titans and Doom Patrol Podcast just for you. Justice League Dark Podcast, Green Lantern Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Strange Adventures Podcast, and finally my favorite of the bunch, DC TV After Dark, where you're allowed to say fuck.
A Supergirl would be right at home.
She would.
Dark. Yeah, she would be cussing up a storm in those little asterisks and question marks and exclamation points, all those things that they use to convey the swear words. So she would definitely fit in right. That would be pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if you could ever, get Melissa Benoist on there. But if
I
you
mean,
could get a Supergirl on DC TV After Dark, and see what her favorite cuss
we'll
word
take
is.
any Supergirl, really. I mean, if you're out there, if you're a Supergirl and you'd like to come on the podcast, please.
Well, speaking of comics and the T Public store, we do have some comic book related designs in the T Public store. So we've got some Superwoman stuff. And so back in the day for DC Comics, they used to have to be approved by the Comics Code Authority. So we have some designs about that in the store. So definitely check it out. We've got some new designs there in the store. If you looked in the past and you're like, oh, they have new things, go check it out and see what we've got in there now. And we would like to thank our Legion of Super sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. So we have a couple of different monthly levels every month, and they come with different things that you get. So definitely check it out at patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. And so I just want to give a shout out to all of our Supergirl Radio Patreon supporters. That would be Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Grout, Yvonne, Quinn, Jessica, Nicola, Leslie, Susan, Abby, Irmgard, Miriam, Cherie, Donna, Nicole, Deb, Naomi, and V. Brewster. So thank you all for your support and helping us with keeping the lights on at Supergirl Radio. And I guess we should talk about the Flat Supergirl contest that we're still running until, I don't know, October, November, whenever the show ends. At some point in the fall.
You have a long time to get your flat super. You have no excuse because it's forever. So we're still running that contest. Surprise, surprise. And you can download and print that flat Supergirl, which you can find in the video description of this live stream, but also in the show notes of the audio podcast or on the right side of supergirlradio.com. Just cut Supergirl out. You just tape her to like a popsicle stick or a pen or a pencil, or you can just walk around with flat Supergirl. I mean, she doesn't have to have a popsicle stick.
That's true.
You could take a creative picture with her, just doing whatever. Maybe she's going on a road trip. Maybe she's enjoying a nice ice cream cone. I don't know. I don't want to tell your flat Supergirl how to live. But once you take that picture, post it as many pictures as you like to Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and tag at Supergirl Radio and use the hashtag Supergirl Adventures.
Yeah, so we do have a recent submission from at VO_Christy. Supergirl is hanging out with Flat Alex and Flat Kelly. So
nice.
I guess there was a commission. I've seen some people commissioned from at Olin Samuel on Twitter to do Flat Alex and Flat Kelly. So we're really building out the team.
Nice. We need a flat Lena showing her flat clavicles. We need a flat Martian Manhunter. We need a flat Dreamer and Brainy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole team in there.
Yeah, so maybe one of these days we'll have a full team, but so I guess you could commission that if you would like to do so. So that's really cool. I'm glad everybody is having lots of fun with that because we just want to have fun in the last season of Supergirl, no matter how long that's gonna last. So we'll see.
Could be a while.
Could be a while. Who knows? Well, you can find me on Instagram at the Derby Kid. I post the occasional picture over there. I'm also doing a lot more on my personal YouTube these days at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. So if you want to give me a subscription over there, I am live streaming just like this every Sunday for the foreseeable future at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm looking at top critics of Rotten Tomatoes. I'm looking at their negative reviews of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and it has been very eye-opening. I believe the next one we're going to look at this upcoming Sunday is from the Toronto Star, and he refers to the audience as popcorn-chewing suckers. So take that how you will.
That makes me want popcorn. So. I know. It's been so long since I've been in a movie theater. I'm like, popcorn chewing suckers. What luxury.
Those people are really living the life.
To go back and be a popcorn chewing sucker once more.
Reading some of those reviews, I'm like, how is this in a professional film critic review? Why would you call your reader a sucker? I don't understand it. So we're going to dive into that and see what Peter, I think it's Peter Howell from the Toronto Star, to see what he said. So if you are interested in that, I'll just be live streaming, and I'm going to literally read the review, and we're going to talk about it. So if you want to come join the live stream and hear me read a review to you, please do. Please join me. That would be great.
That sounds really fun. Have you found any other movies to watch in this journey that you're taking? I know you found, what was the other one? What was the one that was part of the New Yorker?
Francophonia.
Have you found another Francophonia?
I hope not. I don't know. I was not.
That seemed long.
I was not really fond of the structure of it because I don't like voiceover as a general rule, because I think it's used as a crutch, and I think you can tell a story without that. I don't. Film as a genre, really, voiceover is unnecessary. You can do a lot more with dialogue and visuals than just using voiceover. And that film was mostly voiceover.
Oh, no.
It was like the director speaking in first person voiceover about the subject. There were occasionally like dramatizations of historical figures, like Napoleon kind of addresses the camera and the viewer, and he talks to the viewer about some art that features Napoleon. I think in the Louvre, those things were the most interesting to me. But there was a situation where, like, there was a captain in a ship who was experiencing trouble, and I don't know that I ever connected that in the story of the narrative of the film. I don't know. Some of it was really confusing. I don't know if it was like a metaphor of like how we need to take care of art and preserve it. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there are some other films that are going to come up as we look through some of these reviews, because they compare BVS to a lot of films because they don't seem to actually want to discuss the film, which is unfortunate because that's what you're supposed to do as a film critic, in my opinion. So that it's been fun. It's been interesting. There was actually a comment in one of the live chats where somebody said, Is this how all reviews are? I felt like this was supposed to be more than this. And I was like, yeah, this is the way most of them are. So if you don't read reviews a lot, you're expecting something that is disappointing when you actually encounter it. So it's been a good exercise so far.
Well, I'm excited to see what other movies end up on your review list once you take this journey.
We'll see. I'll start making a list for sure.
You'll have to share it with us as you go along. Okay, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic, and you can also find me as a co-host on DCTV After Dark. And also as a co-host on the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. Where that show is still ongoing right now. It hasn't taken any mysteriously long breaks so far. So if you're watching Legends of Tomorrow and you're enjoying it, or if you're not watching it, you just want to know what's going on, we will tell you what's going on. Probably, kind of. We're going to give you also some historical tidbits, but they're going to be not something that you could use in any kind of academic setting or at a party. It's not what I would call information so much as like vague Googling and then kind of half remembered. But we know a lot about Amelia Earhart now. And I feel like if you listen to the podcast, you will too. Because Kat did absolutely no research on Amelia Earhart. And all I know is that she had a co-pilot named Fred. And they were bros.
She had a co-pilot. I never knew that about Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, she had a navigator named Fred.
Well, he didn't do a very good job.
Didn't do great. Not a great job, Fred. I was like, was Fred in her imagination like like Wilson on Castaway? I'm not
so terrible.
Sure.
I'm not laughing at Amelia Earhart. I promise. I think I did a book report on Amelia Earhart.
Rebecca, too soon.
But the idea of Amelia Earhart having a navigator, just the irony of that is,
I think you just want to keep going around in circles, maybe.
I think you should go exactly near the Bermuda Triangle. That maybe that's a good place to go. Oh, come on, Fred. Not a good job.
Fred, it's all Fred's fault. So if you want to know more about Fred, you should definitely listen to our podcast. It's like a history podcast with no actually history in it.
Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio of tomorrow. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And we hope that you will check out Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and support Supergirl comics.
I think the CW are just trying to win the time slot war with Supergirl Radio.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Oh no.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. It's so fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!